John, what is the best way to avoid a hangover?
Well, if we're talking life, before you go to bed, Gatorade, Advil. If we're talking the National Football League,
We are.
win some football games.
I'm Guy. That's John. This is our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it for great advice like that and give this video a like.
Also, check out our podcast below in the description.
Will the 49ers have a Super Bowl hangover? Our buddy Peter Schrager from Good Morning Football and Fox had this to say.
The LA Rams, who went to the Super Bowl in 2018, they missed the playoffs entirely in 2019. So, Peter, make your case. Tell me why the Niners will not have a Super Bowl hangover in 2020.
Because there's no room for complacency.
Because there's no room for complacency, says Peter. But let's talk about hangovers first, John, the NFL kind, and what a Super Bowl hangover looks like or doesn't.
I feel like if you're just at a bar and you're throwing that out with people that follow football, they would act like most teams go under 500 post the Super Bowl. Like it's just a disaster. That's what I think. Super Bowl hangover, team sucks the next year. It's just not the case. Last year, the Rams went 9-7, had a ton of injuries, and in this year's format would have made the playoffs in a division that had arguably two of the best teams in the NFC. The previous year, the Pats, I don't know if you noticed, they won the Super Bowl after they had lost to the Eagles. And the year before, after the Pats or the Falcons and made the playoffs. So I just think sometimes we act like it's all just a disaster, and it's just not.
When I think hangover, I kind of think of the winning team more than the losing team. With one exception, I thought hangover in 2014 after the Seahawks lost to the Patriots. We kind of thought, like, are they going to be able to handle this? Remember, everyone's yelling at each other. Did the OC make the wrong call? That kind of thing. Then they came back the next year and won 10 games and won a playoff game. So I think sometimes – now, the Falcons were weird, right? They changed their OC, but they, like you said, came back and had a nice year. I don't see any hangover for the 49ers. I don't see any reason for them to have a hangover. They should be inspired by their loss. They almost won the Super Bowl. They should come back going, we're good enough to win the Super Bowl.
Well, I'll give you an example. Were the Patriots last year, after they had beat the Rams 13-3 in the Super Bowl, did they have a Super Bowl hangover just as the champs, or did their center have like blood clots and not play a game? Did Gronk retire? Did their first-round wide receiver get hurt? Did Sony Michel just not play well? They still were the number 3 seed hosting a playoff game in the first round. Now, when you factor it in, their standard, to me, they've been the only team in the league the last 20 years and probably the last like 15 years where Super Bowl or bust. No team to me, Guy, in the NFL. The Rodgers Packers in their prime, some of those Roethlisberger teams, even Kansas City this year, like they haven't been doing it long enough, are a Super Bowl or bust team.
Yeah.
You make the playoffs in the NFL and you win a playoff game, I'm sorry, Guy, that's a successful season. Like if you tell me the Niners win 9 or 10 games this year, and I think it's going to be pretty consistent. I've seen studies like 9 games. If they would have had 7 teams in the playoffs over the last decade, basically makes the playoffs every year. You win 9 to 10 games and you win a playoff game, and that probably means a road playoff game. That's an impressive season.
I think if we were going to talk about what coaches fear, like the psychology of their athletes, motivating after success is probably something coaches fear more than motivating after failure, especially when the failure, like you entered the year. And I think everyone that watched the 49ers last year, you kept, especially early, right? They're 8-0, but their schedule wasn't particularly difficult. You're going, is this team good enough? Is this team good enough? They had the shootout with the Saints. Is this team good enough? They beat the Seahawks at the end of the year. Oh, yeah, this team. We think this team's good enough. But they probably had a lot of those questions when the year started. Maybe not all of them. Maybe Richard Sherman didn't have that question. But I think they walked away having proved to themselves, we were leading the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. We had that game in our hands. I think that's something that inspires, not something that demoralizes.
We went to Seattle and won. We swept LA. We know we can beat them. We went on the road to beat the Saints. Like they did a lot of things for the first time to me that like you build off of. I understand losing the Super Bowl when you're up 10 in the fourth quarter hurts, right? It just does. But I think you could argue I think any team, when you build it the right way with the right type people, are always aspiring to do more. I think the Patriots are a great example of this. I think if you look at those McCarthy Packer teams, like until those last like year and a half when it fell apart, every year they were coming out swinging. Like when you have really good players and a really good culture and a really good coach and an infrastructure, you're just gonna be in the mix every year.
As
And
long as
I
you
think,
like kicking ass.
yeah, I mean, who doesn't like kicking ass, winning football games? Because the Niners too are pretty young. Like, look at their core guys
Right.
are relatively young guys, and a lot of contributors on this team have been drafted under this administration. And then they acquired, Trent Williams has never won a playoff game. Sherman is just the ultimate chip. He's kind of the Tom Brady of like defense, right? Huge chip on his shoulder guy who's just always, I mean, he's bitching and moaning, or not, he's just arguing with Darrell Revis because that's just who he is.
Yeah, he's in it. You're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
him, Kittle still in his prime, but then you got a bunch of guys that contributed that haven't hit their prime yet, in theory, right? All the linebackers, the quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, Deebo Samuel's coming into his second year,
Fred Warner,
Nick
you mentioned the
Bosa, Eric
linebackers,
Armstead. The other cornerback, like, what if Emmanuel Mosley comes back as just their cornerback again, right? And is a year better. Like, and then, like you've said when we've talked about this before, is, their head coach is? He's a really good head coach.
I also think it makes it a little easier that their division is so good. So you can't really get the Redskins this week, because it happened once last year, right?
Yeah.
Toward the end of the season, they were playing the Falcons, who were just this weird team. Their coach had picked names out of a hat after the bye, and they were 1-7.
All the coaches were coaching different positions. That's right.
They had gotten hot, but I don't blame the Niners for, it was between like a Rams and a Seattle game. Like, how'd you take them super seriously? And they got beat. But that was, to me, the only time, like, every time they got to a certain roadblock, it was like, okay, the Panthers, could this game be kind of tough? Boom. The Packers, boom. Even the Ravens, it was like, we fucking just heavyweight fight, we lost.
Yeah.
And then the next game against the Saints, heavyweight fight, they won. It just, the ebb and flow, they answered every single bell. You'd say the Falcons was really the only red flag game on the entire season up until the last couple minutes when, I'm sorry, a potential Hall of Fame quarterback just got stupid hot, made some crazy plays.
Yeah. I do think, though, what you just said, it raises an interesting point, which is last year it felt like they got to the Super Bowl on the regular season, right? They went 13-3. It was a knockdown, drag-out NFC race. They get the 1 seed, and then they don't have to. They don't end up having to play the Saints.
They got lucky. Minnesota upset them for sure.
It's not every year that you can win your postseason games in the regular season, right?
I'll give you another one. Seattle was worse than Green Bay because Green Bay beat them, but they matched up. So yeah, I mean, just saying, for the Niners' perspective, it was just, they would have signed up to play Green Bay Packers all day long and 50 times on that Sunday over the Seattle Seahawks, right? I don't care if Marshawn Lynch or Guy Haberman's playing running back for Seattle. Now, Seattle was a different team by that point. They had lost more guys, right? It was a little different, but still.
And now the game's changed this year, right?
What do you mean?
Well, getting a first-round bye was hard enough last year.
Very true. Guy, it came down to literally the final second and the last inch to get the 1 seed. Well, most times it doesn't happen like that. I can't remember quite. I mean, the NFL would sign up for that every day of the week to get a game with that type magnitude. Week 17, they flex it all day long to the Sunday night game. You could have the Saints had a fantastic season, and they were the 3 seed. Think about that. Somehow the Packers, who we all watched, ended up as the 2. But it just shows you the difference between being the 3 and being the 1 came down to like an inch and a George Kittle catch over the course of it really came down to 2 fucking plays. And now with that bye being gone in both conferences, there are going to be teams every year now that go 12-4, 13-3, and they're the 2 seed. And you look at the bracket, you go, we got to win 3 games just to get to the big dance.
You said this to me earlier, and I think you're right, that is not getting enough attention right now. That people, like you said it, people are going to have to see it to really realize.
Kansas City won the Super Bowl last year, and they would not have had the same path this fall, right? They would have had to play an extra game. And who knows? I mean, they were just losing. They were just having weird games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just think this team's good enough. The coach is good enough. If it doesn't happen for them that they're the 1 seed or they're the 2 seed, it won't be because of a hangover. It might be injuries. It might just be some of the little things that went your way last year don't, and all of a sudden you end up with 9 or maybe you're a 10-win team. But like you said to start, if you're a 10-win team, you win a playoff game, that's not a hangover.
Yeah, to me, I look at them like a double-digit win team, and on the low end, probably 10. And if they can win a playoff game, I'm sorry, they're not at the point where I could view that as a failure. Like that means you've won 3 playoff games in 2 years. Like where I come from, that's success.
Yeah.
Unless your name's Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, winning playoff games is a big deal, and a successful season.
If they win a playoff game next year with 11 wins or whatever it is, losing a playoff game would be disappointing. But I think after the year, you'd say, now 2 years in a row, this organization has gotten better under Kyle Shanahan. Right.
Yeah, to me, the only way that I think you could probably nitpick it if, again, they were in a situation where they had a late lead, and then it'd be this elephant in the room with Kyle, right? Super Bowl late lead, Falcons late lead, and then again a late lead. It'd be some situation like that. But it's okay to get beat. You know?
Yeah, it's true. But I'll also say this. I think one thing we'll look at, we'll go this year, and Schrager said this in like his longer comments. For what they lost, they did lose a little, but they bring a ton back. And not just in terms of players, but in terms of coaches, right? And
bring them all.
It could be that this time next year, LaFleur, McDaniels, Saleh, all those guys might be gone from this coaching staff.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing where you look at this coming year for the Niners and go, this is dead set the middle of their window here.
Well, Guy, it's a big year. Richard Sherman's going in the last year of his contract. Probably the last year for D Ford on the team. They're going to need a new corner. If Richard leaves, probably 2. There's just going to be some transition on the defensive side, especially if they're good again. Robert Saleh probably gets a head job. This is a big year to just have another successful season.
But the point being, right, there's a difference between you had a nice year, you had a good year, it was a success, and did you take advantage of this opportunity that you have in front of you?
NFC's hard, Guy.
Yeah, it is. All right, let us know what you think down in the comments below.